Okey, rekordu başlattım. Şu anda rekordluyoruz.
Okey.
O zaman şöyle yapayım bir saniye. Okey, istediğiniz zaman başlayabilirsiniz.
Tamam. 3, 2, 1. Merhabalar, hoş geldiniz. Bugün GAD Academy'nin ilk öğrenci grubun son çalışmaları 6 ay sonra beraber değerlendireceğiz, dinleyeceğiz. Öğrenci arkadaşlar burada. GAD Academy olarak Kemal, Arda, Alkin bu işe ve bu süreçlere eğitimsel anlamda yürüttü. Onu da biraz dinleyeceğiz. Aynı zamanda Gokhan Avcioglu, GAD Academy'nin kurucularından. Benim ismim Gokhan Karakus. GAD Vakfı, GAD Academy'nin bir faaliyet olarak danışmanıyım, yönetici danışmanı. Bizim GAD Academy'deki hedeflerimiz, beklentilerimiz Türkiye içinde mimarlık öğrencileri ve genç mimarlara daha evrensel, bugünün evrensel mimarlık dili ve mimarlık bilimi ve bilgiye dayalı bir eğitim vermekti. Bu eğitimin 2-3 parçası var. İlk önce önemli parçalardan biri bir ofis ortamda gerçekleştiriyoruz bu eğitimi. GAD Global Architectural Development Office'leri Nişantaşı'nda uzun yıllar farklı staj imkanları veriyordu ama biz bunu daha ileriye taşımak istedik. Çünkü daha tutarlı ve net bir eğitim ve eğitim programıyla bunu yapmak istedik. O yüzden ilk önce bir staj benzer bir ortamda bu eğitim aldı öğrenci arkadaşlar. İlk şeyimiz o. İkinci önemli önceliğimiz mimarlık anlamda işin teori tarafına bakmaktı. Mimarlık yaparken belli bir altyapı, belli bir bilimsel altyapı, belli bir felsefe göre yapmanız gerekiyor. Bu bir şart. Bazen dile getiriliyor bu teoriler, altyapılar bazen getirilmiyor. Ama biz bunu bu yıl farklı mimarlık teori, tarihi kitaplarından okuyarak, değerlendirip bazen daha çok dijital multimedya ortamlara girerek GAD Academy'nin ikinci hedefi bu olduğunu böyle olduğunu böyle yapmaya çalışıyoruz. Ve son olarak da tabii ki bugünümüzün çağımızın mimarlık ana araçlardan biri bilgisayarlar. Bilgisayarlar bugünün mimarlıkta olmazsa olmazlardan. Yani bilgisayarsız tabii ki mimarlık olabilir mi? Olabilir ama bugünün şartlarıyla bizim elimizdeki imkanlarıyla hareket etmemiz gerektiği düşünüyoruz. Bunun 3-4 tarafı var. İşte yazılım, donanım, bunun donanım kısmındaki üretim imkanları, yazılım kısmındaki farklı yazılımların çalışma prensipleri ve yazılımın ötesi hazır böyle yazılımlar değil, direkt program yazarak ilerleme bizim mimarlıkta önemli gördüğümüz bir yetenek. Öğrenci arkadaşları bunu aktarmaya istedik ve çalıştık. Kemal, Arda bu konuda bu süreçlerde genç mimar olarak Türkiye'nin içinden geçmiş, Türkiye'nin mimarlık eğitimini almış birisi olarak ondan sonra işte bu evrensel çevreleri yurt dışında Londra'da Architectural Association'ı yapmış birisi olarak onunla ilerledik ve çok önemli işler yaptı Kemal Arda. Ona ilk önce teşekkür etmek istiyoruz. Kemal Arda Alkin burada beklentimizin daha ötesini bir takım şeyler yaptı. Gerek onlara gösterilen yöntemler, gerek onlara verdiği danışmanlık bu çok önemli oldu diye düşünüyoruz. Yani biz GAD Vakfı olarak bunlara hep bu tür ilişkilere önem veriyoruz. Uzun yıllar beraber çalışmayı istiyoruz. Bazen arkadaşlarla direkt çalışıyoruz, bazen indirekt veya network'ın bir parçası. Hedefler bunlardı. İşte bugün biraz öğrencileri dinleyeceğiz. Yani öyle son proje demeyeceğim ama böyle işte son böyle bir şey istedik onlardan. Bir yaklaşım istedik. Onları bugün dinleyeceğiz. Ve bir değerlendirme yapacağız. Bu değerlendirme sonrası bu yapılan işlerin bir sergisi olacak GAD Vakfı'nın GAD Gallery'sinde. Başarı Apartmanı Bronz Sokak'tı galiba şeyde Teşviki İstanbul'da. O sergide bu eğitimin son şeylerden biri, eşliklerden biri. Şimdi Kemal Arda dinleyelim. Burada ne yaptık, neyi göreceğiz, onu bir dinleyelim. Ondan sonra kısa bir Gokhan Avcıoğlu'ndan dinleyeceğiz. Teşekkürler.
Ben teşekkür ederim, sağ olun. Çok güzel bir konuşmaydı. Buradaki eğitim programında aslında yaklaşık olarak 6 ay boyunca bir dijital teknikler, bunları nasıl kullanabiliriz, bunların mimarlıkla alakaları ne, teoride nasıl kullanıldılar, daha önce nasıl kullanılmışlar, bunların üzerinden geçtik. Daha sonrasında da biraz AI üzerine birkaç şeyler anlatacağım. Hatta Gökhan Bey, siz şimdi mi konuşacaksınız? Okey, tamam. Ben bir AI üzerine bir sunum yapacağım. Daha sonra da 4 öğrencimizin yapmış olduğu projeleri inceleyeceğiz. Sunumumuz İngilizce olacak. O yüzden buraya kadarki bölüm Türkçeydi. Artık İngilizce olacak. Evet. Okay. So, let's begin. So, what you are seeing right now is the swarm of the birds, and their formations across different scales and changing over time with the different inputs that they are receiving. And what is really interesting about this kind of flocking behavior, or let's say Boyd, or any kind of swarm intelligence, is that the intelligence, it may not appear from inside really clearly, but if you go out of the flock and look at the swarm itself, you can see individual pieces by one, and they are just moving in a collective behavior, and which is kind of the tradition in trying to mimic a behavior and as a collective intelligence. What is important is that you have an individual and a collective behavior, and each of the individual units are trying to do best for themselves, which result in the best of the population. And this presentation will be about what is intelligence, what is creativity, and what is AI, and what can we do with AI in the field of architecture. And to begin the presentation, I think this flocking behavior is really important because it's so simple and in a way simple in nature, and we can see it around, but actually we are using these kind of formations in computers and computer generated images or models as well. So I want to explain what is life and how John Conway tried to mimic this life resemblance in his cellular automata. So okay. So this is what you are seeing is the game of life, and it's created in 1970 by mathematician John Conway, and sadly he passed away in 2020 from COVID. And he created this game where it's played on an infinite grid of square cells, and each of the which is either live or dead, and there are only two rules for that. Any dead cell within exactly 3 neighbors can come to life like this, or with less than 2 will die. And so this is you can set up initial arrangement of the cells, and 2 rules apply to generate the next generation and then the next generation after that, and it just repeats itself automatically like this. And Conway called this a 0-player game.
Time's okay.
Sorry?
Evet. Tamam, at. Yani
And Conway called this 0-player game, and it can do sort of different stuff, as you are seeing, where he tries to mimic life itself. You can see the changing patterns over time. You have this glider effect where you just kind of go to the infinite grids, or you can just fizzle out the effects of each other. And this is kind of what the problem is in computational world. You can try to mimic life itself, but you cannot estimate how long it will last. Like this one lasts forever and just keep repeating new cells, and some of them is not repeating themselves. Some just cancel out, like these gliders that they just keep moving. And the problem is it's undecidable in many ways, and well, you have like more of the. So the problem is that it is undecidable, and the idea is that as you run the simulation, well, you will keep generating new stuff, but it's just undecidable and kind of crazy. And so I want to also show you this clip of Neuralink, because this one is really terrifying. What they did in here is that Neuralink is first let me explain that Neuralink is a company run by Elon Musk, and where they have about this company, and they put a brain implants on this monkey that you are seeing, and they're trying to analyze the brain waves and neurons and which one fires and what is the activity relationship between themselves as he continues to play this game. So there's the banana milkshake that he's getting as a reward system, and you can see that he's moving the joystick through the orange rectangle. But like, let me just move further the clip. So it's still plugged, but so after they analyze the behavior, okay, so they just disconnected the plug, and then they just still can pull this. Like, it's just crazy because there's a brain implant in the brain of the monkey, and they're just receiving the signals, and they are all doing this by artificial intelligence, which is just crazy. And well, this is kind of terrifying as well. Slavoj Zizek is kind of terrified after this example. He thinks that like we can be controlled by something like this as well. And so what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is also is like the godfather of the computation is Alan Turing, of course, and it's the most complex form that we ever came as the computation itself. So Turing published this paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence in Imitation Game, in 1950, and after that he didn't use the term AI, but he just put the possibility of how machines might be able to learn and how they could become intelligent. And this is 1956, Dartmouth College in the United States. And there was this conference in the States that to talk about these new developments. And these guys actually coined artificial intelligence themselves. And this one is Margaret Bowden. She is a real authority in the figure of AI. But the thing about AI is that it's developing so fast that you can't even recognize. Some codes might change over 2 weeks and 3 weeks, and they just keep updating themselves. So Bowden said that AI seeks to make computers do the sort of thing that mind can do, but we will see that it can do something much more better than mind can do. Well, at least some specific parts it can do better. And so this is the basic arrangement of the understanding of the AI. So you have the AI, and in that you have machine learning applications, which can be supervised, unsupervised, self-supervised, and like if you go much more deeper, you have neural networks, and then you have style GAN, cycle GAN, like all of these different types of adversarial networks as well. And then you have the deep learning in the like as the most predominant form of learning right now. And it's like a way of understanding, and the more recent forms of AI and deep learning is dominant form right now. So it's like Russian balls nested in each other, like. And but here, what you are seeing on the left is that we have a neuron or a synapse over here, and then you have a neural network layering system, which has the different types of weights and synapses, and like you can see the resemblance between themselves because like these are the neural network layers that you have, and each of the synapses are kind of in different weights and in different order. So this is the most important difference between the neural network, is that it doesn't know what it's doing, right? So it's not conscious of the activity that it has been doing. And this has been actually really criticized really well by John Searle from, and let's talk about intelligence. And so this is the kind of critique of the AI in terms of how consciousness can be created in AI, or what is consciousness and how are we approaching this. So what you're seeing is John Searle from UC Berkeley. He created these kind of understanding of what is AI and what is consciousness. So in the outside of the computer, what you are thinking is that whomever is inside is an intelligent Chinese speaker, but in the inside, the man doesn't know even Chinese, but he's just going through the instructions of what he should be doing, and then the results comes out, right? But it's like too many hard work over there, but you don't recognize that because you are outside of the box. And so the idea is that the people working or the machine that is inside doesn't know what it's doing. So it's not conscious, but it actually is not, and it doesn't have consciousness. So this is kind of the thing. And we have the most, and I want to show you here another terrifying example. In the last few months, how capable, amazingly capable AI is. And this one is by OpenAI, owned by, I believe, Elon Musk right now. Microsoft bought that, but after that, he also bought that. I'm like using this one in Neuralink as well. This one is called GPT-3, and it is the most advanced natural language processing machine that we have, and it can replicate human behavior. So I will just play a short clip of this one.
Hello, I'm Eric Elliott, and today I have this.
Okay, so.
Okay, and what does that mean? That means I have feelings. Okay.
Well, so that one, this is the avatar of the GPT-3, and well, it can just mimic faces, it can mimic voice, behavior, and when it's called that, like, do you have feeling? It says that, yes, I have feelings, because, well, does the AI lie about this? Of course, he's not lying, but they train this AI on like job interviews and that kind of stuff. So what it does is it tries to achieve success no matter what relies between. So it's kind of lying in this interview. It's kind of funny, but the broader question is that, can AI be conscious? And well, I don't know. And I don't believe that doesn't need to develop consciousness, but
hello, I'm Eric Elliott. Today I have this.
And so if we look at the idea about being connected with technology and artificial intelligence, Elon Musk says that we are already cyborg, right? Because we are using our digital tools, phones, like television, computers, all of the digital world is kind of the prosthesis of our body, and like we are just using them as an extension, and we are already kind of creating who we are with the digital persona that we also have. And this is kind of scary as well. And another question could be that, if or could AI be more creative than humans? And this was a debate that went in, I remember, at Dubai in the World AI Conference. You have Jack Ma, head of the Alibaba, and who is also in this AI business, and you have Elon Musk, who, like, he's using SpaceX, which uses AI. Tesla cars uses AI, and he has Neuralink as well. So Jack Ma thinks that computers may be clever, but humans are much more smarter. And well, Elon Musk says definitely not. And I really believe that, because like we did some experimentations with the AI, and it's crazy powerful, and it's so much more creative in some sense that maybe it is more creative than humans maybe could be. Well, you'll see in the future. But this is a talk from Blaise Aguero y Arcas. She's working in Google as an AI specialist, and they have this kind of place called Google Artists and Machine Intelligence, and these people work with Refik Anadol and the other AI guys, let's say. And so this is how a neural network works, right? So in the left, you have a picture of the bird, and then you have these kind of nodes or synapses, what you want to call, and you have these types of layers, and then each of them are connected, and each of them have different types of weights. and the information just propagates itself through left to right. So when you say this is, so it says that this one is bird, but the challenge is, what if we do reverse? So what if I tell the computer that it's a bird and try to generate a bird image out of that? So this is the image of the birds when you ask computer what a bird is. And these are some experiments that we did. So if you look for the colorful surrealism, it will give you this. And if you look at surrealism, you get that kind of picture. And this one was a little funny. Shrek eating pizza was kind of fun for me. And well, you can see types of Shrek faces, and that green is coming from probably why Shrek is green. And like you have kind of pizza blended in some form of geometry, and well, it's just really incredible. And on the right hand side, you have Metropolis, which creates some chaotic urban planning. And well, but the and this one is a Deep Dream, this kind of psychedelic, kind of birdy, fishy look, and like these things can be generated by computers right now, and it's just really incredible that like you can take a Van Gogh painting and even apply a deep learning structure onto that, and you can actually see it. It's amazing. But I believe it was 2014, and Ian Goodfellow was the game changer of the AI, because what he did was he created these generative adversarial networks where there are basically two neural networks that are fighting and competing with each other to kind of get what they want. And this is how it really simply works. So we have a generator, and then we have a discriminator. So I have the real Mona Lisa, and I go to a guy and say, okay, can you paint the Mona Lisa? And he just starts painting, and I take them both to a detective, and they're looking, okay, this one is fake and this one is real. So this is how it looks. So you have a training set, and then you have the generator. And then by using random noise algorithms, you can create some fake images and try to understand if it is fake or real, and then discrimination just judges that. And well, I'm not really going to the deep, but after that, the network just learns much more better. And this was NVIDIA, so the main researcher in the machine learning and the kind of GAN stuff is NVIDIA, and they just created these, maybe you saw this one, but this Flickr Face HQ database, which is the largest data set out there, I think. And what they're doing is they're kind of blending the different latent space vectors, and they are trying to create these kind of effect. And I think that it's just incredible. None of these people exist, but you can actually see that these are real people, and the blend between all of these different types of people is just amazing. And it's just showing us how good AI is right now, and just imagine it in 10 years. And so okay, so let's talk about AI and art a little bit. So this one is Edmund de Bellamy, which is auctioned almost for $500,000 in Christie's in 2018. And this painting isn't painted. It's just the idea was to try to gather all of these data from old paintings and start to create something. And it's just incredible that it has been auctioned for $500,000. And then you have Mario Klingman, who is like using these kind of two faces blending it together, and really kind of abstract the effect. And this one is Gauguin from NVIDIA. You can just paint something like this on the left, and it will give you the output on the right. So it's a really simple stuff. And all of these stuff are kind of like in a reach of your hand right now because of the computational power and the knowledge out there on the internet, right? So like, but the question becomes like, what can we do with these kind of AI stuff and doing architecture? So back, like, I think 2 years ago, I went to UCL Discrete book publication, and there was this guy called Emmanuel Koch, and he's kind of leading these kind of, not leading maybe just by himself, but this article was really crazy. And what he's doing is he's creating these 3D geometries and teaches computer how they got formed, and then you can kind of replicate the behavior itself. And well, this was the first experiment that I did with Gokhan Avcioglu's paintings. I gathered his sketches over the last 30 years and try to combine them in a way that machine will kind of hallucinate between themselves, and maybe we can discover something that he didn't paint but might be suitable for architecture. And well, this video will be on our page, so you can watch this. So you can see that it kind of blends, and if you look at the original sketches, there some of them are really similar and some of them are not. But well, the first experiment that we did, and after that, I tried to increase the resolution of these frames because it was low, and I want to.
I'm gonna get dressed. You have to go.
Okay, 1 second.
Okay, so and this was the second experiment that we did with the real actual building data. So you can see that I gathered all of the buildings that my office did and tried to combine them all with including rendering and like real photos as well, and it just started hallucinating. And this was really incredible because what you are seeing in some, well, this one is my favorite actually. These white.
I really need to go.
Gokhan Bey, sizin sesiniz geliyor. Sizin yükleyeyim mi?
No, please get dressed.
Karakuş.
Bir dakika. Konuşmayın. Pardon, sorry.
Okay. No problem. And so after seeing this, like, are human beings so creative? That's the main question that I want to think about. And Theodor Adorno, philosopher, says that humans are indissolubly linked with imitation, and you kind of become human by looking at the other humans and trying to mimic their behavior. And I believe that's really true because when you look at the architectural, like from architectural aspect, well, this is the Sydney Opera House, and what we have is like this ship and kind of creating their formation in a building. Or Frank Gehry, you see two different buildings of Frank Gehry, but they're kind of looking similar, and it's just looking for maybe a style or maybe an approach towards something and then just mimicking from them and like just combining all of the strategies that you have. But the question is, are humans really creative? Well, I don't think we are creative as much as we think we are creative. And can AI be more creative than humans? Well, we saw an example of this in AlphaGo. AlphaGo is a company, well, they're basically trying to play against Lee Sedol, who is not the first, but like one of the top 5 players of Go in the world. And I think in second game, 13th move or in some move, the AI did something really stupid. Like it seemed really stupid, but well, people were laughing and they just thought the computer glitched, but it actually didn't glitch. And now the strategy of playing Go has been evolved because no one has ever thought about a strategy like this, and it was just mind-blowing. And perhaps that was the kind of game changer moments in AI, because Go cannot, like Go is not a game at chess. Well, you can't just put the finite number of numbers into a strategy and try to look for the one that suits you. So Go has probably more than 1 billion or 1 million possibilities. So it's really hard to teach computer how to play Go. And this one is Memo Aktan's work, Gloomy Sunday, I think. So what he is doing, I believe this is Cycle again, where he used white, blue, and yellow code and trained them on sunset images. And what you are seeing is he's basically blending geometry on the left and receiving an output of a sea and a sky and really beautiful landscapes on the right. It's just incredible because this kind of creativity cannot be achieved by something that is human, I believe, because it's just really amazing. Well, and then it just continues because he trained this on different types of data sets. He trains on fire, flames, and there's this kind of rock where he uses black. And I believe there was flowers too. And you can see clouds. So based on flowers in the shape of a hand. And they're just trying to see the world as it is flowers. And I believe it's beautiful. And I want to end my talk by one of the quotes from Hiroshi Ishiguro, one of the world's leading roboticists. And robot is a kind of mirror that reflects humanity, and by creating intelligent robots, we can open up new opportunities to contemplate what it means to be human. And I really agree with him, because when you're trying to put a behavior and trying to decode that, try to replicate and produce something out of that, then everything becomes kind of structured in your mind that, well, I believe AI has much more potential, and I think we will see more of the usage of AI in all of the fields, and probably mostly in architecture. Well, thank you for listening to me. And I believe now we can continue with the student presentations. I will just stop my screen sharing. So we will have 4 students, and they are going to present to you what we have did in the final month of the academy. And so we will start by Asli. Yeah. Mute. Okay.
Okay. I share the screen.
Yeah.
No. You can see, right?
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, then I will start. Hello, everyone. In my project, I try to create alternatives in the name of smart city plan and indoor living space for Bağcılar district, which is the most affected and still affected by the pandemic process in the city where I live, in Istanbul. In this way, I try to take new steps on how to improve the current course against a possible pandemic situation. First, if we consider the issue as a pandemic process, we could have predicted that this process would start from Bill Gates' speech in 2014, but we did not want to believe it. As we all know, when we came to the end of 2019, the first COVID case appeared in Wuhan, China, and spread all over the world at this speed that we could never imagine. Its speed could not be continued, and the whole world struggles with the same problem. As April 19, more than 141 million cases of COVID-19 have been reported for all over the world. And in this process, countries follow different policies. Some were successful and some were insufficient. There were things common to each state. We could not leave our homes during the pandemic, and many workplaces, schools, restaurants, and many other places went into total closure. Our habits have changed tremendously, and the perception of the hygiene that is common all over the world has emerged. Everyone tried to protect themselves in some way. Everyone has made concessions from the activities in their life. While trying to control the process, the good news came from Russia, and the vaccine was found. In the process, we are currently in the vaccination process now somehow we all try to convince ourselves that we came to the end. As it can be understood from here, COVID has been in our lives for more than 2 years, and yes, now we remember the process again, and COVID has created many radical changes in our lives. You can see that. Although processes differ by state, globally, the COVID processes have affected in our lives in all areas. Although we may not be aware of some of them, our habits, our daily routines, the environment we find has changed enormously. And we adapted to the situation without realizing it. Statistically, the data says that people sleep 65% of their life, work to 26%, travel 9%, and the thing that really affects us, the most important one is 69% of them spent indoor is conference spaces. As for the time of the pandemic, the population has spent 88% of their time at home. And during the pandemic, people had to do all these habits in their homes. Yes, they remained in this situation, but some had to compromise too much on their routine life at home, while others had to meet all these needs in the houses. If you need to see them more clearly, for example, in a place rich in green space, such as London, the situation of those who live in the pandemic process, and in an area such as Istanbul, where the vertical architecture is increasing every day, it was quite different to be able to spend this process. For this reason, while some regions were easier to go through the pandemic process, some regions were much harder than they expected, and they could not foresee these previous structural errors could make life so difficult. In the pandemic, we need the most open and green spaces, and we always wanted the green space to take walk our pets, or socialize with people. As can be seen from the analysis, in comparison of area, 6.4 square meters of parking area per person falls in Istanbul, while this figure is 47.5 square meters in the London. This gray table of green area and the number of people per square meter is of course not a surprise. In the last 30 years, urbanization in Istanbul has quite different, and you can see this from the table that is currently on the screen. First in 1985, it's now the Arnavutköy third airport place. Looking at the area that seems to be the airport region, and many regions are only agricultural areas, while now these regions have been replaced by the enterprises and the new districts. The necessity of another topic of discussion, yes, but the pandemic situation in Istanbul and the fact that the population is affected by the pandemic are seen by these comparisons, and which is not surprising. As we can see in the other examples, the districts in which many of us live now are regions previously used for agricultural purposes. According to the data from Center for Satellite Communication and Remote Sensing of Istanbul Technical University, the picture for Istanbul is so sad. In fact, the inevitable end shows itself quite a lot in the data. The amount of the green area, which was 4.2 square meters per capita in 1985 and 1.9 square meters in 2020, and although we are not aware, this situation has a very negative impact on the people of Istanbul during the COVID process. And in this regard, I have set certain parameters on how we can improve the lifestyle of the persons in the regions against unexpected natural disasters, pandemics, and etc. The situation shows that our homes have been completely transformed from a place where we only spend our very small part of the day to our living space for us, and we try to allow many of our activities to be done in our home. These activities were inevitable things in people's lives also. And for example, in the pandemic era, Istanbul, 67% of people worked from home, 44% continued their education from home, and 69% of them continued their own habits at home. Also in Istanbul, 49% of the jobs that could work at home for a home office, and the rest had to go to work, and many were exposed to the advertising of the conditions of the pandemic. And in fact, the only positive aspect of this, other than the pandemic, was the people could move, because looking at the data, 34% of home office employees could not move at home at all, and could not create a space for themselves to move, and thus could not exercise. I wanted to reduce this to the area where I live in and further detail it. When we reduce the events to concept of habitat, the population and the area of Istanbul are considered, and the average 2,841 people per square meter. And in addition to, according to the Forest Association Supervisory Board, while green area per capita was 7% in 1970s, this amount was fallen 1% today, and it's so sad for also Istanbul. In cosmopolitan Istanbul, where the difference in social classes is incredibly high, It also varies by the region. For example, considering rate of the construction of houses in the Ataşehir region and the socioeconomic level of people in the region, the differences in the numbers of cases compared to Ümraniye is inevitable. The same is true in the Güzelce and Sultanbeyli region, and in these areas, in areas with a large population, COVID remained out of control, which slowed the process immensely. Istanbul COVID, as can be seen in the map, and the country weaved on the basis of for transformation of the more uniform, people of greenery, where fresh air can get to own the home office to provide a work environment where they can occur in places, able to create areas where you can isolate yourself, such as islands and slavery. A result of the unplanned urbanization is very high. The apartment completely consisting of the green area, where lived mostly in the limit of the ratio is received, and the lower income group at Bağcılar and Esenler, the COVID is much more common. Let us take the high and lows, because the COVID rate is in the islands regions is the lowest, because socioeconomic level is high, the rate of the work from home is more, and the house structures are detected or low rise. The use of public transport is almost minimal. On the other hand, the ratio in Bağcılar and Esenler region is very high, because the buildings adjacent and to each other and more vertical architectural density, lack of open green spaces, frequent and intensive transportation, and terms that remain the center of these regions. At this point, our talk is in the slightly lower income area. What measures can be taken against possible pandemic conditions in other regions? How these regions can be improved as living conditions? What can be changed in the internal regulations to pass the possible pandemic situations with less damage? We need to address them. And in this regard, I discussed viticulture, which is the region where COVID appears to be the most common. Bağcılar is a district on the European side of Istanbul. It is the third highest among Istanbul districts. And the district has a population density, it's so hard you can see. And Bağcılar, although its capacity in terms of zoning and projects is also full, has received migration for above its capacity for the last 15 years. I wanted to examine the region in a more detail, as I will take steps to improve the conditions of the region against possible pandemic situation in the process. First, I wanted to start with the people of the region and the needs of that people. If we elaborate, let us take the economy. Textile is the district, is the locomotive sector, and there are important commercial units on its borders. And naturally, the surrounding peoples are made up of people who work here. And in the field of the education and culture, you can also see the all the numbers of the education and greenery and waste generated. Because all these centers occupy large areas, there's almost no green space in the region. If you give the data, only 0.7 square meters of green space per person in Bağcılar, and this is quite low compared to other districts in Istanbul. Pollution in the region is also at the highest level, and the causes of the pollution are domestic and industrial waste. In Bağcılar district, where 1,700 houses and businesses are located, and the annual amount of the garbage is 2,600 tons. Now let us examine why COVID made so many explosions in this area, according to the area we know. And first, let us sort out what were the factors affecting COVID growing in this region. Intense and uncontrolled buildings. The region where the average low income, socioeconomic level is too low, literacy rate, lack of suitable businesses having too little for home office to work, too narrow, and the houses are so small. And there are the use of the main causes of the processes is the lack of the field. The only good news is that 61% of the region is ready to enter the urban transformation. Now let us compare this situation with the two other districts that have experienced similar conditions with an approximate population number, and see where the results will lead us. As you can see, the presentation includes Bağcılar and the districts from China and India. The population of these districts and the area square meters are close to each other. but each region process with COVID was different. In fact, as you can see from the visuals, this feature is not very unexpected. But now let us go into more detail. As you can see, Nanyang survived the pandemic with a little damage. So let us examine how Nanyang succeeds despite its population during the pandemic and what decisions is made after the pandemic. The measures in Nanyang began primarily with strict quarantine practices and curfews. Public spaces in the area were closed. Only hospitals, pharmacies, and grocery stores were allowed to operate. Only one person was allowed out of each house, and even for special needs. Positive cases were followed in the change and tested for any more who was likely to be infected. In more detail, people in their life mostly never left the house, only used the green spaces in their own area. Those who had to get out moved by bicycle. The state borrowed many needs to the people's home. And in this visual, we can see a post-COVID building in Nanyang district. And in fact, it fully explains the situation, I think. And for life after COVID from China, China has acted on behalf of structuring. The self-sufficient city of Guilin architects has created a housing development concept in China that could generate its own energy and food during another coronavirus lockdown. Spanish studio Guilin architects includes greenhouses for growing foods and in its design, large sloping roofs lined with solar panels and workshops filled with 3D printers. The design will be fully self-sufficient in the residential development in the event of a complete deadlock. And in the event of another crash caused by the pandemic, each household would still have access to their own open spaces. When the picture is in this way, in fact, 61% of similar opportunities will be urban transformation in Bağcılar region. To implement the idea is quite attractive, I think. For this, I wanted to consider the districts of Göztepe, which will benefit most from urban transformation in Bağcılar, because the region is ready to enter urban transformation. And in the event of a possible pandemic, I wanted to make recommendations for it on how this region will circumvent this process with minimal damage. First, let us get to know the area completely, and you can also see the total population, total area, and also number of households in here. As you can also see the number of urban transformation education institutions and religious institutions and health and medical care to the diagram. And as can be seen from the analysis on the region, Göztepe districts in the area about the transport networks, but in a completely educated houses layout, the lack of adequate health institutions for the population and the limited green spaces or public areas have led an increase in the COVID situation in the region. The area is seriously abused area. The fact that the construction is irregular has caused the population to not spread homogeneously. Due to the distorted and irregular settlements in the region, air pollution is at its highest level and the spread of the disease has been much faster than true. And while the picture is so bad, the fact that 61% of the region will undergo the urban transformation has given rise in the idea of the new post-COVID life proposal should be made for this region. And as you can see in the simulation, constructions will decrease over time and urban transformation areas will appear. In this way, these regions can be evaluated and steps can be taken to minimize the negative consequences in the event of possible pandemic. Now, to understand the picture more clearly, let's see how the disease spread during the COVID process in the regions with the help of simulation. As you can see, it's spreading much faster than expected, and the risk of the infection is increasing in this region with each passing day. Many factors cause this, yes, but considering the improvements for the post-COVID period in this region has become the must for the health of the people in the region, I think. as seen in the simulation, changing the starting points of the disease in the grading system, the rate of speed of COVID varies in each grid and affects the post-COVID process on this region, I think. And you can also see the way in the simulation, I think. First, I handled the area with a griddle system. Considering the square meters in the inputs, the population has spread irregularly. And as can be seen, some regions have a high density, while some regions have a very low density. And we can distribute this area homogeneously. We will be able to reduce the risk and thus reduce the risk of transmission, I think. And if we can analyze each area in a griddle system itself, it may be possible to solve the situation only within the regions without spreading in the event of the possible pandemic. In this case, I have drawn up different scenarios for new construction in the region and analyzed them through a diagram. First, it should be ensured that people living in each grid in this region can increase their green space and live clean air in their green area in accordance with the social distance in case of possible closure. In this way, people can get fresh air in their areas during the period of prohibition, and they can isolate themselves accordingly. In addition, since people in this region also need to go to work, the new transport lines should be equally accessible and frequent to all. And at the same time, health facilities that were inadequate during the COVID period in the region should be reconstructed and on the grid basis. I have made an optimal calculation per square meter in the grid system. And in this case, when 140 people are placed in each region, they can all be distributed homogeneously to 2,225 square meters. And in this case, the area per capita, which was previously 1.4, can increase to 3.6, and this can be the same for all grids. Converting the regions with 5 blocks and having 16 floors of each block is the most optimal solution. In such an order, 4 grids for 1 school and 3 grids also falls to the health institutions, which can be met with this data. And in the analysis, it's possible to see different alternatives of houses in the region. When focusing on a single grid, I dealt with the more detail on the grid spaces. In this case, when the quartier system is proposed, the optimized results will be achieved in the region. Both the green space, settlements, and accessibility in the region will be most optimized solutions for the people in the region to get out of a possible pandemic situation with the least damage. Yes, this is how the table looks like at the district scale. And with such a construction proposal, the formation of a self-sufficient region against natural disaster and unexpected situations will be a logical solution. And yes, life will be like this in these houses, but since the COVID spread rate is in the highest in indoors, we can solve the COVID spread rate problem in closed areas in the region by making changes in the interior arrangements. And in this case, I looked at the issues that people spend time at home in their daily routines. And as can be seen from the table, while pre-COVID people spent 69% of their days at home, this rate increased 88% during the COVID period. And this shows that people spend a lot of time in their homes, and changes were necessary in the Göztepe area in terms of the interior spaces. As a result of the investigations, the densities of a region where people spend time in their homes before and during COVID period has changed. As this can be understood from here, while people used to spend more time in their homes, they started to spend time in the kitchen and living room during the COVID period, which has changed the habits of people in their homes and the areas where they spent the time. While looking at the interior proposals for the Göztepe, I examined other examples from around the world, and Alejandro Aravena, a famous Chilean architect, Alejandro Aravena, is remarkable project due its revolutionary vision. The house in this project is Aravena's world, the half houses. And Aravena uses a concept he calls progressive housing. And he's to build half of a real house spread over more space for the same cost. And in this project, he designed a basic house with 2 rooms and necessary ventilation places on an area of 430 square meters. So the families that moved into these houses could progressively build the rest of the house based on the space they had. When building was finished, they give each family 50% of the house. Whenever these families wanted to add it to their home, it would be easy for them to add the original structures. This project shed light on the interior design I wanted to do because Göztepe is also low income and densely populated area. Now let us examine the interior of the houses in the area. In Göztepe, the houses on a square meter basis are approximately 90 square meters, and it's necessary to offer the best solution for the interior in this new construction. Because looking at the month of March 2020, the first quarantinated house in Istanbul is in Bağcılar, and it's a family apartment. This shows that COVID is spreading mostly in closed areas, and it is necessary to solve this on the indoor basis. Looking at household and interior design, this situation is, I think, inevitable. On the way to the solution, I first revealed the needs of the people in their homes and determined the most necessary areas. In this case, the kitchen, isolation area, toilet, and the bedroom must be any kind in the new construction. And users can choose the rest according to their own needs and then expand their homes according to their own lifestyle. In this case, the most optimized plan for the interior can be reached, and people who determine their interiors according to their lifestyle or hobbies can survive this process in their own living spaces with the least damage in case of a possible pandemic or natural disasters. In this case, from the average data, I found that percentage of the houses were allocated for, and at this point, I reached the information that 15% is in the kitchen, 20% is in living room, 6% is toilet, 5% is the entrance and hygiene area, 40% is the bedroom, and 14% is the open spaces for the average data. And I evaluated the houses in different forms based on 100 square meters, 150 square meters, and 200 square meters. And as it can be seen from the table, I separated each square meters into different plans. As a result, I tried to create the most suitable interior. And at this point, I looked at the percentages of the houses, and thus I tried to establish the most suitable interiors. And how can divide the space according to the needs of the people, and how they can establish the living space in 1 square meter. Each model integrated square meters with itself, and more than 9 optimized results were output for each area. After these data, I designed the interior for the most optimized results. And finally, as seen here, the houses were designed in the most optimized way. 50% of the houses were built, and then I decided that the situation should change according to the people's own needs and hobbies. From these square meters, post-COVID life has been reduced to the least damage, and it's aimed that people can use their living spaces in the best way against a possible pandemic situation. And as a result of the project, a post-COVID life proposal was given for the Bağcılar-Göztepe region, both on a district scale and indoor scales, and thus a self-sufficient district and interior space proposal that can be shaped according to the needs were presented. Thank you all for listening.
Very good presentation. Thank you, Asli. I really like the fact that you are starting your project from from beginning of the COVID and just continuing trying to solve the problem of COVID and change of behaviors, habits, needs for space, and we are all spending time in the interior right now. And like just touching these kind of subjects, I think that really matters. And great presentation, thank you. Karakus, do you have something to say? Something to add?
Yes. In terms of the optimization, Aslan, what do you feel is the after this? If you go to the slide before this one, Aslan,
I think that these are.
There was one slide before this one. Before
this one.
Yeah. Now we're looking here on optimization, but the geometry is changing from this linear to this circular based, arrangement. So there is some kind of decision made to group these around, this central living room, which seems a little bit different from your more kind of very calculative approach. I wanted to, see what you thought about, because you're going from this linear model based on the optimization of the relationships of percentages, but when you bring it all together in this in the lower group, which then becomes your floor plan, what do you feel you're achieving in optimization in this plan? If you could just say that over again, and then in terms of life in this space, what do you feel would be the outcomes? What would be the positive outcomes in terms of the optimization? Like, first question: what do you feel is the optimization achieved here? If you can review your idea, and then based on this plan, what do you feel is the most what is the most to be gained by this plant here for this interior?
At first, I just note in this slide. In this slide, you can also see the different square meters for each 100 and 150 and 200 square meters. And for the optimization process, I think that, for example, for the 5 square meters for the entrance, you can see that the A is not most optimized result because B is more suitable for the interior spaces. And also these are for all for the kitchens, living room, toilets, bedroom, open spaces. First, I designed this part for to take each square meters, and for example, for the 50 square meters for kitchen, you can see A, B, and C for all the results for 15 square meters. And for the optimization, I just select the best solutions for the interior spaces, because you can also see that I put some furniture in it, and I designed a lot of plans, and the most suitable one is this optimization, I think. And then I detailed, that's why I detailed for this plan. And the second question for you, I think that these houses are really suitable for the also Göztepe, because you can see that there is open spaces for each area. You can also see that open spaces, maybe a hobby and sport area. This is not in the Göztepe now, but if we can do this for the post-COVID process, I think that their life is wonderful, I think, because you can see that they have only you can also see the data here. Their houses are too small, and they do not have these types of interior plans in their houses. And also you can see that there is a house. The other part of the house is designed by the households, and I think it's really good for them, because they design houses for their own needs. Maybe they added an online education area or online sports area or another workplace for here. In my opinion, for the post-COVID process of Göztepe, if they plan for each square meters. I think that this is the most optimized and the well-designed solution.
Okay, I think this introduction of this open space is probably the best, the most interesting part of your whole research is this kind of flexible open space becomes a kind of spatial typology. And I think this is probably a success of your projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So we continue with Irem. Right? Irem, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Should I start?
Yeah, you can.
So you can see the screen, right?
I think it's loading. Yeah, I can see now.
Okay, so hi everyone. So my project focuses on past disaster architecture, and the design generates emergency shelters which accommodate to the basic needs of a community after an earthquake in Istanbul, specifically on Balat. So around the world, hurricanes, floods, volcanic eruptions, and earthquakes pose a growing threat to lives of millions. Some of us may have even lived through one, and we know that they can be deadly. On average, earthquakes kill 10,000 people each year. Sometimes numbers are far higher. The quake that hit Haiti in 2010 killed more than 300,000 people, which is one of the deadliest on record. Also, it is estimated that there are 500,000 detectable natural disasters in the world each year, and 100,000 of these can be felt, and hundreds of them cause damage. In recorded history, the world never experienced a magnitude 10 earthquake, but scientists predict an average of at least one major earthquake of magnitude 8 or higher every year. The fact is, earthquake crust is restless and always on the move. So quakes are the result of pressure caused by extreme stress in the earth crust. That stress be caused by volcanic eruptions or even by mid activity. So we can see earthquakes coming, but we can prepare for them. Scientists are currently studying the project, the power of earthquakes, and anticipate one day and where they can strike next. So when we look at the world statistics, Ring of Fire is the most destructive belt where 80% of the natural disasters occur. And it can be seen here where the blue dots are dense. Alpine belt is the second most destructive belt where 17% of the volcanic eruptions are and earthquakes occur. This belt stretches from Java and Sumatra through Anatolia, the Mediterranean, and about into the Atlantic. And these areas are home to millions. In the video, we see major quakes from 2000 to our day. Also, technology develops over time. The impact of the earthquake does not decrease. In fact, in certain areas with the overpopulation, it even increases. Moreover, when we look at the geomorphological location of Turkey, it's affected by North Anatolian fault. The North Anatolian fault is a continuously expanding fault in which two tectonic plates are moving through each other. As the Arabian plate and Eurasian plate slide together, the minor tectonic plate where Turkey is located is being squeezed westward. Over the last 70 years, the North Anatolian fault has fractured, causing a series of devastating earthquakes with an overall expansion of east to west. So Istanbul is a megacity with over 15 million residents, which makes it is the most dense city in Turkey. Istanbul straddles Europe and Asia across the Bosphorus Strait. It is also the cultural and economical capital of the country. So when we look at the urban growth of Istanbul from 2002 to our day, a total of 65,000 hectares of built area was added. Of that built up area, 37% was infill, 33% was expansion, 28% was leapfrog, and 9% was inclusion. Even if Istanbul extends towards north, the green areas decrease, and the input makes the centers more squeezed. So focusing on Istanbul, since the fault passes through the south of Istanbul crossing Marmara Sea, the city will be less affected going through north. The most hazard areas include Marmara and Bosphorus coast, covering the Turku Peninsula and the central district of Istanbul. In case of 7.5 magnitude earthquake, almost 2 million people will become homeless. Showing on maps, the red areas, which overlay mostly on the central district, will be the most affected areas. People who live in these areas will have immediate need of emergency housing due to the low quality of building stock. After the earthquake, 80% of the roads will be blocked by building debris, and the transportation through highways will be very difficult. So after the last devastating earthquake, which is closest to the Istanbul, took place in 1999, many precautions have taken all over the city. The number of 5,600 gathering areas announced. However, as years passed, most of the gathering areas privatized, and the number of these which provide the necessary criteria decreases to just 77. A new emergency roads declared by 8% of emergency roads were transformed to parking lots too. So the selected area, Fatih, is economic and cultural district of the city. However, it is also most vulnerable area. With historical peninsula, Fatih became the most visited district in Istanbul. So it has a major importance for Istanbul and Turkey. In Fatih, in case of 7.5 magnitude earthquake, at least 5,500 buildings will get badly damaged and 14% of buildings will demolish. When we look at the road closures, it is clear that most of the roads will be blocked by building debris. So there will be a small chance of highway transportation. With that said, the Golden Horn, where Balat, Ayvansaray, and other seashore districts located, can be used for logistics and emergency aid transportation through sea. So we thought that since pre-disaster process in Turkey is not taken seriously, how can Istanbul respond and recover from such foreseen earthquake? So the idea of hope after earthquake came out to respond to these problems. The project explores a shelter that accommodates to the basic needs of community after earthquake. The main theme of the project is to design units which are adaptable and easily assembled in order to account for a variety of situations and respond to a series of unique functions. The aim is not just to create a closed shelter area, but also with semi-open and open areas to provide need of communities such as children areas, psychological support areas, education, and health areas. So the project specifically focuses in Balat district, which is an old city located in west bank of the Golden Horn. The connection with sea makes Balat special. So when we look at the earthquake simulation, we see that 51% of the buildings will be demolished, and most of the buildings are housing. So almost half of the population will need emergency sheltering. In the evacuation simulation, it is clear that Balat has a dense building population, so there are only 3 potential gathering areas, and Balat shoreline has a potential for emergency shelter area. After this simulation, we see that the possibility of the opening up to a larger vista by intersection points on streets. This means in red areas, possibility of movement is restricted to the density of the building. However, in sea shoreline, we see that the possibility of movement area increase. So with these analyses, the first proposal is to increase the quality of Balat shoreline. The yellow area has a potential to become a port, which can increase the cultural interaction in Balat in city life. And the main aim of the port is that part of it will stay empty, that it can be a recovery and response area in emergency situations. So the form of the deck will be determined according to the result of the density growth simulation, which is shown by DLA, which is diffuse limited aggregation, the process whereby particles undergoing a random walk due to the Brownian motion cluster together to form aggregates. So each pier will serve emergency shelter to different number of people. That's why each one has different repeat numbers. So first pier will accommodate shelter for 100 people, and second pier will accommodate shelter for 200 people. Third pier will accommodate support and first aid areas for earthquake victims, while fourth pier will accommodate shelter for 300 people, and finally fifth pier where ships will approach for logistics and first aid. So here we see the evacuation road from gathering areas to shoreline, where in the sea the emergency shelters will appear. This is the plan of pontoons which are attached to piers. Pontoons are a type of floating device used for structure. The structure of pontoon formed by tubes which are airtight and hollow, making them water resistant and unsinkable. So since there will be a lot of, like 50% of the buildings will demolish, there will be no land to put the emergency shelters. The main idea of here is to put emergency shelters on the above the sea, with above the pontoons. So emergency shelters will form above the pontoons. The aim of the shelters are to provide security, community environments, livelihood opportunities, and access to services such as electricity and water accessibility. And each shelter have different sizes that they provide necessary functions to earthquake victims. Here we see minimum requirements for shelters. Besides the shelters, that community will have access to their social needs, such as green area, aid room, and social hubs to ease their recovery process. So actually, the smallest shelter will form by 20 meters square for one people, and second one formed by 30 meters square, which accommodates 4 to 6 people, and another 20 meters square for 2 to 4 people. So each shelter is 4 meter to 4 meter cubes, and they have skeleton structure. One shelter can have 8 neighbors. Another shelter can attach to the surface of previous shelter. Also, the elevated shelters should support by skeleton structures. After that, according to the number of victims, the shelters can generate. And in the below diagram, we can see the evolution of one emergency shelter. And this is the site plan of pontoons and shelters, emergency shelters. And this is an example for plan and section. So where earthquake victims stay. And this is a 3D visual where the pontoons and shelters will be. And this is another one. So thanks for listening.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you. Sorry, you can go.
Arda,
Yeah.
When did we meet last? 2 weeks ago, right? We reviewed these projects.
Yeah.
So it's within 2 weeks this was created. I think, you have the general space planning strategies in line, but in terms of the way they come together, and it kind of loses some of its design efficacy, let's say, when you go from those tendril type systems to these systems. I wonder if in your visualization it would be better to go with a more, instead of these blocks, because these blocks I don't think represent architecture in as much as they represent a certain spatial management parameter. I think it went all pretty well until that point, but when you got into these things, I think it kind of lost some of its design impact. So that would be my, your suggestion of taking out parts of the city in terms of evacuation and provide housing, and then using the growth into the Haliç as a possible methodology. These are interesting. But when it comes down to this last design proposal, which I think is done very quickly, so I don't know, it's maybe the time limitation. Here we lose some of that more, let's say, quote unquote, mathematical, organical orientation. So that would be my comment. But otherwise, it was a very effective review of the concerns.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think that earthquake in Istanbul is really serious, and there should be much more precautions for that. And there isn't, and trying to address that issue regarding an earthquake and an emergency unit system and the loss of these systems throughout the time in Istanbul, and trying to point that out is really good, and I really like to see that these kind of growth simulations in kind of in a collaborative way with architecture. And well, if we had more time, we can obviously develop these forms in a much more detailed way. But like as a kind of spatial arrangement, I believe we have come so far. And thank you for the great presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we are continuing with Ebru, right?
Yes.
Can you share your screen? No.
Okay. 1 minute. Okay, we will start. My topic is swarm intelligence in urban design and urban contexts such as transformation infrastructure. The study aims to analyze the conveying issues such as transformation infrastructure, human density, and urban pattern in city with methodology based on the capacity of swarm intelligence as biological developments. For example, the growth of slime mold has been transferred as the pattern, and in fact is possible at visualized biological formation to existing urban problem or the design process of the urban pattern. Let's talk about the project content. In this context, the study included analyzed the transportation infrastructure of Istanbul and then compares it with a PFCT and analyzed the metro network with the methodology based on the capacity of the swarm intelligence and recreate the area determined of urban design with this methodology. On this page, we see hardship in urban transformation is infrastructure due to many factors such as human density, unsatisfactory infrastructure, and vehicle density. On the other page, I'll just talk about Istanbul transportation. There are 3 types of transportation is in the examination of the Istanbul infrastructure, such as the transition from the Anatolian and European, and also urban transformation between 2 sites. Transportation is provided by the existing sea, land, and rail system. With the population increasing every year, public buses are the most used transportation, while private vehicles are the second, and rail system are the third. After I handled the existing metro line in the Istanbul transportation infrastructure, to explain in short a little of 5.6 million people in area with a surface area in 5.343 square kilometers. There are 7 metro lines in the European side and 11.5 million people live in this part, while there are 2 metro lines in the Anatolian side and 4.1 million people live. Approximately 2.7 million people use the metro line every day. On this page, Istanbul day and night traffic were analyzed with Kepler-GL. Kepler-GL is a data visualization tool. For example, on this data visualization in the morning hour, it can be seen that the D100 highway on the Anatolian side and average vehicle density in the Eminönü region, Mecidiyeköy, Gayrettepe metro axis increasing to 70% on the European side. In the evening hour, the density of the waiting time in the direction of Ortaköy exceeded 45 minutes. The density of the vehicle moving at the 9 average speed of the 40 kilometers on the Eminönü side. On this page, I will touch on the regional population distribution of Istanbul. For example, the district, the highest population is Esenyurt, least population is Şile. In the second picture, we see the population distribution by age. The city consists of the 13,6 young, 63 middle age, and 11 elderly population. On the other hand, I talk about the compares Istanbul transportation infrastructure with other cities such as New York, London, and Tokyo. And we see the image from the city. On the other hand, one of the most important points we will see on this page, diffuse distribution of subway network within the city of the New York, London, and Tokyo. And also when we comparing in the Istanbul metro line with the other three cities, it seems that the area covered by the total metro network is lowest. For example, while the ratio of the New York, London, and Tokyo city area, the existing subway network blends respectively are 0.08, 0.2, and 0.13. This ratio in 0.03 in Istanbul. On the other hand, the time people spend the transportation during the day in larger compared to other cities. So what is the proposal? In line with all research, the study addresses and proposes the rating difficulties, transportation, and diffuse of Istanbul metro line in swarm intelligence. Okay, so what is the swarm intelligence? Swarm intelligence is behavior that occurs naturally and artificially in self-organizing system. It was first introduced by Girardo and Zink in 1989. Interaction between swarm intelligence created without the central control structure has led in the emergence of the intelligence global behavior unknown to individuals. Inspiration often have been coming from the nature established by biological system. In this video, among the creatures whose swarm intelligence we see in the management process of the collective organism are ants and bees, and also the slime mold, like that. On the other hand, so how is the behavior process artificial creation, the swarm intelligence? First of all, two components are considered in the artificial creation of swarm intelligence. The first is particle as organism, and the second is voxel, the area each which the particle can move. The particle move on the wanted angle as a figure. Also, each frame an address from the particle move on the grid. For example, the light grid has intensively particle. At this point, I will refer to step the particle, their artificial movements. First step, there are three different sensors. The particle can move from the span of the swarm intelligence, and it will move towards whichever of the voxel is intense. For example, in the second diagram, we will see the particle can move toward the dense voxel in the upper right corner. And on the other hand, the orientation of the particle to the densest grid can be decided by the angle. And also the third step, deposit Kemal structure is the trace by hands by the particle. And the other page is the diffuse Kemal attractor emitted by the particle on the voxel. Last step is the decay Kemal attractor. It was shown the particle in that dense grid degrees over time and lost density. Therefore, the voxel dark voxel color becomes separate point when the sensor angle was larger. Next, I handled the slime mold behavior as an approach to creating movement artificial generate swarm intelligence around the select point. So what is the swarm? Slime mold. Slime mold are the single-celling organism. It feeds on all kind of that plant's residue, and also its leaf thing they achieve. It puts the shortest way self-organization process. In this video, we see how it spread and analyze biological side and growth, and also it can solve the most complex life event in the shortest way for foods, and also it can even be trained to be risk in the name of the big pass. Another video is the animation. I showed the behavior of the slime mold achieve its foods the shortest way, like that. So, can't optimized metro network be created with smart behavior? At this point, the examination of the subway line, Tokyo subway line, was carried out. Tokyo's railway network system formation with slime molds. It was researched by Hokkaido University in 2009. It took 26 hours for the slime mold to achieve the foods they placed on the existing subway line, and the network created with the behavior is similar to existing rail network, and as a result, the rail system created with human touch taking care. Slime mold formed in only 26 hours. At this point, I thought about addressing the rail network system of the city we live in with biological behavior. In this video, we see the Istanbul Metro line, which was started to build 1989, and then metro line what were built in the following process and existing process. Right part, I considered how the existing metro line will be with the slime of behavior analysis, like that. Okay. First of all, I choose the buses metro station for this approach. For example, and we see Bağcılar Station, Çekmeköy, Gayrettepe, Kağıthane, etc. I placed that on the selected station in this animation. These points are actually foot points of the slime mold. I placed that selected station in this animation. These points are actually foot points, and sensor angle particle range from the 19 to 15 to 19 degree. As an angle increase, the particle combined, and after while, the connection between the foot detects. The most optimized sensor angle value is 45, like in the top right animation. I concluded the study at 45 degree sensor angle artificial slime mold behavior. And when we look at the current rail system and network system obtained with slime mold behavior is similar. And the most important point, network obtained with slime mold behavior was the particle density in Beşiktaş region. And then they focused on the Beşiktaş region and analyzed by change, speed, distance, etc. particle without the changing sensor angle in this region. Then we see many variation, and also the after many variation, it was concluded that 70% of the particles were concentrated in Beşiktaş Square. Also, the Kant's urban design be considered with this approach in Beşiktaş Square, which is the most important point where the density we see the swarm behavior analyzed is highest. And also the study aims to analyze swarm logic and behavior in Beşiktaş Square to transform the results in urban design. And after analyze the main road and central line Beşiktaş Square with the swarm intelligence and obtain a field structure. And this image, this video is section animation 3D form. After this approach, I just determine the point of the human density of proceeded form finding process with slime behavior. For example, the density point close to Beşiktaş Bazaar entrance, ferry port, and in also the direction Gayrettepe or Ortaköy. Here we see the design metro station, pedestrian access, and green space, and also the type view of the project, also the image from the different angle. And last one, we see the animation of the project like this. Yeah. My project, that's all.
Thank you, Ebru, for the great presentation. And you want to start?
Yeah, I just want to thank Ebru for doing a lot of work on this design the last 2 weeks. I think she's gotten it to a really interesting point. And the last resulting design, you know, I have to say was a little bit maybe not so connected to all this railway transportation, because you're talking about railway networks, and all of a sudden then we have this public space thing. So there's a bit of a break there, I think. But you know, the rationale between the slime mold structures and railways, these are interesting proposals. And then to my mind, seemingly distinct from that, this Beşiktaş area, which is now being redeveloped, this last design has some interesting derivations from the slime mold, but also with some design decisions made to make it into a kind of usable public space. So I think it's a good design proposal, but it seems disconnected. There seems to be a break between that and the works. But thank you very much, Ebru. It was an interesting study you did.
Yeah, thank you for listening.
I really like the fact that you are trying to just analyze the overdense population by trying to understand it by swarm intelligence, because that's what crowd should be doing, right? And I really like the fact that you are trying different types of optimization strategies for the optimum food and Kemal tractor values, and I believe that was a really good research, and final form just resembles that as well. So well done. Thank you for your project. Okay, so now we have the final student, Su. You are muted. Can you unmute?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I will start my project.
Okay.
So my project is Amalgamation of Realities, an extended reality hub in Haydarpaşa. Yes, so let me start this video. In the 1960s, way before anyone had smartphones, internet, social media, we had a totally different system. Marshall Mcluhan, a medium creates a totally new environment for human senses. It creates a totally new world and a total outlook for populations. Philosopher of communication Marshall McLuhan declared the medium is the message. The way we share media is more important than the message itself. What he meant was those changes in media, such as the introduction of the internet, TV, radio, or printing, were more consequential for the society than the message uttered through them. So according to Marshall McLuhan, we had three phases of the evolution of media. The tribal age, where we communicated through sound, words. Later, then following, the acoustic place in history. The following phase is the literary age, where writing was the main focus of communication. And following that, we had the print age, where the newspaper, the phone, telegraph, and letters. The means was that. Later, we had the electronic age, which was the introduction of TV, printer, telephone, cell phone, radio. And later, right now, we have the digital age, which is the social media and internet itself. The way we send and receive information is more important than the information itself. Have changed the way we behave and look to the world. It is impossible to understand social and cultural knowledge of the working media. Yes. So let me start this. Wait a minute. Sorry, just a second. As curious beings, it's in our nature to wonder about the future. Even when we think about the past, it is only because we are hardwired to find patterns so we can better predict the future outcomes. The driving force that shapes almost every aspect of the future of our civilization is technology. So during the first century of the common era remained relatively unchanged compared to living people at 1,000 years later. Civilization shifted into the next gear, only Industrial Revolution kicked in. In a span of only 260 years after the first Industrial Revolution, technology transformed our lives more than ever before in the history of our species. In most of the science fiction movies, we see a life in the future that is with fancy gadgets and equipment, fulfilling all our needs by command. Perhaps the first technology to mimic such scenario is the XR itself and robotics. So imagine yourself living in Paris in 2005 and you wake up in Paris and you go to work in your VR glasses, you visit India, you go to Mars, you play, and then you attend a business meeting elsewhere. And it is only possible through virtual reality. So what is XR? Extended reality is a mix of real environment that comes from the fusion of ubiquitous sensor actuator networks and shared online virtual worlds. It refers to all real and virtual environments generated by computer graphics and variables. X in the XR is simply a variable that can stand from different forms such as VR, AR, or MR. The time of environment where real reality is supported by digital worlds seamlessly integrated with real life interactions. Reality is not substituted by these add-ons, but it is enriched with different forms of media. Virtual reality, it is computer-generated simulation of a 3D image or environment that can be interacted with a seemingly real or physical way using electronic. Sorry. So yes, it blocks out your worldview and substitutes a digital world that is designed to fool your senses. It's an approximation of our real reality that is digital, but not reality itself. We are sent to be a completely immersive with no real world stimuli affecting the experience. The goal is to make the user feel as if they're in fact in another place, which is the effect of the presence and sensation of the emergence into another space. By stimulating as many senses as possible, such as vision, hearing, touch, and even in some cases, smell, the computer is transformed into a gatekeeper to this artificial world that is designed. So, what is AR? AR is augmented reality, enhanced vision of the real physical world that is achieved through the use of digital visual tools, sound, or other sensory elements that is delivered via technology. It allows overlaying real object with some virtual content, a system that incorporates three basic features: a combination of real and virtual world, real-time interactions, accurate 3D registration of virtual and real objects. It is goal to not cut out the real world and transport you into another one, but to be an enhancement of your real world with a set of magical virtual elements or objects. Examples of this include Pokemon Go, Snapchat filters, and other filters that you use in Instagram. It makes the difference that it directly affects the perception and process of human mind. And it's also used in various different places, such as restaurants, traveling, or even designing. MR, last extended reality one. It's a blend of physical and digital worlds, unlocking the links between human and computer, merging of real and virtual worlds to produce a new environments and visualizations where physical and digital objects coexist and interact in real time. It does not exclusively take place in either physical or virtual world, but it's a hybrid of real reality and virtual reality. Unlike VR, which immerses the end user in a completely digital environment, or the AR, which layers digital content on top of the real environment, physical environment, MR blends these two together, the digital and the physical world together. Now let's see a spectrum that shows the reality. So 100% is the 100% real world is the physical reality that we're in, the physical environment that we see through our eyes. And 100% is the virtual world, the virtual reality that is designed by the computer or other technological devices. In physical world, user is fully aware of the surroundings. It has a direct view of reality. Augmented reality, which is partially away from the physical reality, virtual objects overlaid in a real world environment adds computer-generated information to the real world. An example to this is the AR kit that is designed by iOS Apple. Mixed reality merging of both the real and the digital world. An example for this is Microsoft HoloLens. It is actually like the middle of the spectrum. It is both digital and real environment combined together. Augmented virtuality, which is close to virtual reality. It is where real objects projected and controlled in a virtual world adds real information to a computer-generated environment. VR Oculus Rift is an example of this. And lastly, we have virtual reality, which is the immersion of full digital environment where the user is completely unaware of its surrounding. So how does our brain respond to extended realities? Well, discoveries have shown and research have shown that when we use AR or other types of reality, such as VR or MR, but in most cases AR, it has shown that our brain remembers more through AR due to the content that we are being shown to project it to. AR drives high levels of visual attention into the brain, almost double than of the non-AR tasks that we accomplish. AR elicits a surprise response in the brain. What is stored or encoded into memory is 70% higher for AR experiences. So using virtual reality does not damage our brain, but instead it actually stores a more valid information that we obtain through that experience that we have with AR, VR, or MR compared to the normal experiences. These are some of the activities that can be done through the use of virtual reality. It includes virtual reality tourism, education, fashion, traveling, or medical, or other military type of educations. It is even being integrated into the shopping malls in our daily lives or to other type of games and etc. Cedric Price's Fun Palace was also an inspiration for my project, where he designed a space as a response to the social and economic crisis that England had faced after the World War II, and to the way in which technology was altering the distinctions among work, education, and leisure. According to him, it is an automation is coming more and more. Machines do our work for us. There is going to be yet more time left over, yet more for human energy consumed. Fan Palace's end result was a meta-synthesis of architecture, theater, technology, and cybernetics, which would become increasingly central as the project progressed. Since the program of the place would be an ad hoc determined by its user, and like a swarm or meteorological system, its behavior would be unstable, indeterminate, and unpredictable. So in a sense, the place will have its own brain and will determine the activities that will be conducted according to the user's needs and wants. And therefore, it's a type of cyberspace. Cybernetics allows dynamic systems to self-regulate and self-correct without end state or definite telos. The performative object of cybernetics are in reality fluid criteria and are subject to modification as the system itself. It's like we can consider Cedric Price Fan Palace as a virtual architecture. It has no single program, but rather can be reprogrammed to perform an endlessly variety of functions. These were some of the architecture program that was integrated to Fan Palace, and I use those as a base as well. And these were some of the inspirational things that I have chosen for my project, such as Black Mirror's cyberspace topic, or the way it shows how we can enter a virtual world and live through it. So meta means occurring later and or success to, or after, or beyond. Physics is the science that deals with matter and energy and their interactions. And metaphysics is the abstract philosophical studies, a study of what is outside objective experience. So concepts and ideologies that I have chosen: Disneyfication, a postmodernist utopia of happy consumerism, a preemptive heterotopia of deviation, both of illusion and compensation, an urban loop of simulated spaces developed by entertainment developers in the attempt of capitalizing the mental image of a place. It is a simulacra of real spaces. Heterotopia are something like counter-sites, kind of effectively enacted utopia in which the real sites, all the other real sites that can be found within the culture, are simultaneously represented, contested, and inversed. And hyperreality is the combination of simulacra and simulation. It's a heightened and exaggerated type of space that is way away from reality itself. And this idea was brought by John Baudrillard himself. So simulation is the imitation of the operation of a real-world process or system over time. They are the models of real without origin or reality, a hyperreality. It is the active process of replacement of real, and it threatens the distinction between both true and false, and the real and the imaginary. Simulacrum, a representational image or presence that deceives the product of simulation, usurping reality. A copy without an original. What is simulated? A copy of reality which has already lost its original presence, immense and meaning. Simulation is no longer that of a territory, a referential being, or a substance. It is a generation by models, a real without origin or reality, a hyperreal. The difference between them is while simulation refers to a process in motion, whereas simulacrum refers to a more static image. Simulacra and simulation is a discussion of image, science, and how they relate to contemporaneity. John Baudrillard was the one who found these two topics, because nowadays humans are defining their environments by symbols and signs, and they think of human experience as a type of simulation of reality. So what are the stages of hyperreality? Stage one is faithful. Initially, the sign itself, the image or representation, is a reflection of a basic reality. The image reflects a profound reality, a faithful image copy. An example is a portrait. Second stage is the perversion. The sign masks a basic reality, the image becomes a distortion of reality. It is the perversion of reality. Here, the signs and images do not faithfully reveal reality to us. Reality has been slightly heightened or exaggerated. An example is an icon. Stage three is pretense. The sign masks the absence of a basic reality. The image calls into question what the reality is and if it even exists. The image masks the absence of a profound reality, where the simulacrum pretends to be a faithful copy, but it's a copy without original. An example for this is Disneyland or Disney World. And stage four is the pure simulation itself. The image has no relation to any other reality or whatsoever. It is its own pure simulacrum. An example is the ultimate matrix. We can think of an orange as an example to stage one. An orange juice is stage two, where you take the orange, take its liquid out and pour it as orange juice. Stage three is Fanta. It has a slight taste of orange. So it kind of reminds you to the orange itself. And the last stage is the gummy bears, which has no relation with orange because you put a chemical that will resemble orange itself, but not the orange itself. So you're way away from the original fruit orange at stage 4. It's only a reminiscence of it. So the inspirational people that I have used is John Baudrillard, Michael Foucault, Cedric Price, Gordon Pask, William Gibson. The concepts that I have driven from these people are hyperreality, heterotopia, fanpolis, cybernetics, cyberspace, and the tools that I will be using to design is virtual reality, augmented reality, AI, machine learning, timelessness, spacelessness, dynamism. And the outcomes will be perception, senses, customization, subjectivity, and mixed reality. The user profile will be the train driver, manpower to compensate for the physical distance between cyberspace, the programmer, the one who will be building the system itself, we, media, the streamers, the one who will be using, and the robots who will be designing the space. I will be placing my virtual hub to Haydarpaşa, and its surrounding is pretty rich. It has lots of different contexts. It has lots of religious contexts, such as the Selimiye Mosque, the Maiden Tower, Hagia Sophia Mosque, the Blue Mosque, and historical spaces such as the Topkapı Palace. And it also has educational surroundings, the University of Health Science, health facilities, commercial spaces surrounding it, and the port, Kadıköy port itself, which provides a touristic space. And obviously Haydarpaşa itself is a historical space, but right now it is under construction and is kind of left abandoned. Here's a more detailed analysis of the surrounding, where you can see there's lots of residential, historical, education, religious, and commercial and industrial spaces surrounding the Haydarpaşa railway station. So right now, the railway station is not being used, but it has the leftovers of the old rail paths. Here you can see the historical train line, as well as the new metro line that was built close by to the Haydarpaşa. Here are some of the side perspectives that you will see. And the first one is the road, the bridge that passes through Haydarpaşa. And the second one, you can see where the old train station used to be. This was a photo that was taken in 2014, so it's not like this at the moment, but you can still see currently you can still see the railway lines. And the third one shows the Haydarpaşa and the train. And the fourth one is the bridge itself again. These were the preliminary sketch ideas that I have done to find my form. Since this will be a virtual hub, the building itself should be quite unique and quite alien maybe, to show that we're entering a new phase, a digital era. This is the form finding process. So what this virtual hub will include, this is due to COVID-19, people are unable to travel, and due to the economic crisis that Turkey is currently in, they're also unable to travel elsewhere and to get education. The idea of this virtual hub is to introduce people to this virtual and digital world that is waiting people in the future, near future, to get them used to it, and to also allow the qualities and features that a virtual world, virtual reality will brought to us, such as in education or in traveling. So the idea of this is to empower the education system, to empower people that are staying home, to show them that they're able to travel without actually going somewhere outside the country. So the hub will include social spaces, such as cafes, restaurants, a research and workspace to introduce people of Kadıköy and Istanbul to the VR, AR, and MR technologies, and to get used to them. An exhibition space, forest space, because right now in Istanbul, due to the over-dense buildings, there's a lack of green space. And in order to compensate to that, this space will also provide the forest space. The train tunnels will be used, and old Haydarpaşa train station will also be integrated. So by integrating Haydarpaşa train station, we're actually in stage 1, the icon itself. And also using the old train to enter to the building, we're actually providing a sınıflar area, because the train is actually for traveling from one place to another, for not traveling inside the building, but this train will be traveling inside using the old train rail. The train tunnel will provide the simulation itself And the building itself will be the hyperreality. This is the final form of the building. As you can see, I have used the old train path and the old train itself and Haydarpaşa, and connected them to my buildings to show how hyperreality can be integrated into our current world. Yes, this was an interior render. So what I mean by hyperreality in the building is the idea is to integrate MR technologies and AR technologies to the building's exterior facade to show people that they can live hyperreality by just looking to the building's facade itself. So this was, these images were taken from the nature, and machine learning was used to turn them into guns, a generative algorithm network, and they were projected onto the surface of the building. Why we use these images? To show that through AI, you can change the image itself and project onto the building. And the images were actually from nature, but when you change it to this, it actually becomes a simulator because there is no connection to the origin anymore. You don't see nature itself, but you see AI's transformation of that image. This was the train tunnel. And this is how it's changed. So when you enter to the train, you go through this tunnel, through this virtual reality to enter to the building. So it's like a transformation phase where the train driver takes you from the physical world and allows you to enter to the building, going through this tunnel. So these were the architectural programs that I have used. Social areas include a virtual cafe, interactive lounge, augmented restaurant. Research and workspace includes a virtual education space, interactive laboratory, augmented research space. Exhibition space includes a virtual tourism space, mixed reality exhibition, interactive auditorium. Forest space includes a virtual forest, interactive forest, and augmented forest. So each space is driven into 3 divisions according to the reality spectrum that they provide. So as we go from reality to virtual, reality is where everyone sees everything. So it's more objective, uncustomized. And when you go to virtual, it becomes more customizable, and you can integrate more senses to it, and it becomes more subjective. So here is how I take one person from reality to virtual. So this was an example from my virtual forest. In reality, you have the visual, but as you go to the virtual, as the reality spectrum goes towards the virtual, you add more senses. From visual, you add sound, touch, and smell. And in the most virtual content, you have visual, sound, touch, smell together. So social areas, reality spectrum, I have, as I've told you, divided the social areas into 3 according to their reality. So the first one is, which is closest to the real world, is the augmented reality, augmented restaurant. It's hyper-reality stage is stage 2 because it has connection to the real world, 90% real environment, 10% virtual environment, 85% transparency. What is meant is that you still have lots of connection to the real world around you. You can still connect with the people around you. So you're not really blocked from the real world that is around. And senses uses vision and sound, and rate of customization is 25%. Next, you have the interactive lounge, where MR technologies are used. So you have your VR goggles and you have your phone. You can use both, or you can be without these equipments and still be projected to the virtual world. It's stage 3 simulation, 50% real environment, 50% virtual, and 50% transparency. Senses uses vision, sound, and touch. It allows 50% customization. And last is the virtual one, which uses augmented virtuality. Since you don't have taste and smell, it is really hard to put you into 100% virtual world. So that's why it's in augmented virtuality. It's a stage 4 simulation simulator because it has no connection to the real world. You're in the actual virtual environment with virtual people. It is 5% real and 95% virtual environment, and 5% transparency. So this is the lowest transparency. You have no connection with the real world actually. And the senses use this vision, sound, and touch. It's 95% customizable because you're on your own in this world. So this is the interactive lounge. A video of it is, sorry, is here. Sorry. So you can see that you have lots of different projections around you, but you're in the same space. And through goggles, you can see different things. And it's interactive because you have the sense of touch as well. So this was the virtual cafe. And here you can see two people are in the same space, but one is in Paris, one is in New York. And through their goggles, they can interact with other people who are using the same hub elsewhere. And this provides interaction, visual and sound. So two people who can't travel through this technology to elsewhere. So research and workspace reality spectrum, we have augmented research space, which is simulations basically. It provides a library where you can read through your phones, pads or computers. It's 85% real, 15% virtual, and provides 95% transparency because you still have lots of connection to the real world. And the customization rate is the lowest. And the mixed reality is used in the interactive laboratories where you use goggles and other technologies supported as well. It is stage 4 because it uses both simulation and simulacra. And it is 30% real, 80% virtual, and 90% customization. Again, the senses use this vision, sound, and touch. And the most virtual one is, again, the augmented virtuality one. This is actually currently being used in medical studies and military studies and sports studies. They can train themselves through simulations without actually going through all the other physical stuff. This is actually stage 4, simulation and simulacra, 5% real, 95% virtual, and 5% transparency. But as I have said, virtual and augmented reality is being recognized better by the memory and is being stored better by the memory. So use of this technology can actually create lots of opportunities. Last is the exhibition space. It provides, again, 3 divisions: interactive auditorium, where there's a simulation you can play games with other people through wearing VR glasses. It is 30% real environment, 70% virtual, 35% transparency, and 55% customization. There's a mixed reality exhibition where you can see different visual content without wearing glasses. It is, again, simulation and simulacra, but 50% real and 50% virtual. And last is the virtual tourism, where you can travel by wearing VR goggles to anywhere in the world you want, with any people you want, because it's, again, interactive. At some point, there's technologies that is being worked on that will include smell at some point. This is the interactive auditorium, where people will be wearing glasses and watching games or playing games with themselves. This is the virtual tourism. And the forest space, which will allow people of Istanbul to go to a forest without actually going outside the building. Augmented forest is where you can see travel the forest through your phones and iPads. It's a stage 2, 80% real environment, 20% virtual, 75% transparency, vision and sound is used. And the interactive forest is stage 3 simulation, 50% real environment, 50% virtual, and it includes vision, sound, touch, and smell. Since it's an interior space, smell can be added in this case. And glass is a virtual forest, which is, again, a simulation itself. Everyone can customize their own forest and create their own forest and create their own emotions through that forest. Yes, and this is a virtual forest. As you can see, different people are in different spaces while being in the same room. Yes, that's it.
Okay, so I think this is a very successful educational and design effort under the leadership of Kemal, Arda in this last 6 months. I think both in what I've seen in this project and I think what I saw in your personal development, you definitely went into another sphere of thinking, let's say. And it's quite clear that in this presentation that you're exploring different modes of architecture and design as they move into the virtual realm. And I applaud your effort to try to make this virtual realm a more positivist, socially minded, socially interactive, and nature interfacing area. Because as a critic of this period, I'm skeptical of various virtualities because I feel that the reality principle, IRL, in real life, is still an important principle. So your design, I think, is explores many dimensions of this new realm, both the video-based augmented reality video aspect of that. So I think you're exploring this. I think this is a kind of, for me, a kind of beginning perhaps for you. So, I think that was successful. In terms of your form making and your form finding, also I thought that, if you go back to that slide of your yeah, that one side of from the top, you saw your keep going back.
There it was.
Yeah, exactly. So we had,
was it this one?
Render from the top, I believe. Yeah, around here, exactly. So yeah, this form finding also, in the GAD Academy, part of our interest is to develop forms using different types of software and mathematical relationships. And this is my interest, and I think Gokhan Avcioglu has had this interest for a long time, based on his initial work with Peter Eisenman a long time ago. They did an exhibition called The Virtual House in the late 1990s. So, you're in the area where all this stuff is happening. The only issue I would have is with regard to the interface between the form finding element and then the virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality elements. And this is a very difficult proposition. So I'm not saying, it's very easy, but to somehow make these forms and then the projection of the forms and the exploration of this as a virtual reality or augmented reality at the layer of, let's say, a kind of field of experience, I think it can be looked at, because the symbolic aspect that you explore as images and then these kind of abstract form finding, I think there's some kind of middle ground between the two, where certain shapes have latent symbolic importance. I was watching a television program with my wife. It's a weird program where they was a doctor who treats skin problems, and this guy had a big thing on his chest, big like growth, and they took it out, this growth, and looked kind of weird, everything, and they made it like talk like a duck. So this kind of between this kind of abstracted form and then a symbolic layer, I think this could perhaps be a kind of midway for you between your augmented reality, virtual reality, kind of more mise-en-scène, scenographic approach, and then here with this form finding approach. I think for a very successful project, I think that could be the only suggestion, criticism. But I think as you and the rest of the students have realized, this area is very deep and wide, and it requires a lot more time and thinking. So thank you very much.
I thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the great project, first of all. I think combining these kind of conceptual elements as time and bringing them together was a really good idea, and I really congratulate you for that. And so we are in the ending of our presentation right now. So if you want to check out more of the things that we have developed and researched on, there will be an exhibition of our works, not only this project, but also other projects as well. This was the final kind of, let's say, bringing together all of the elements that we have learned throughout the last month, because these kinds of strategies really take out time, and you can see much more detailed aggregations, data visualizations, and generative adversarial networks in our gallery as well. And thank you all for listening and contributing. And I guess that's the end, right?
Yeah, that's the end. Thank you very much, Kemal, Arda, and thank you, Gokhan Avcioglu, who sent some comments that he's been in and out, and I look forward to the exhibition later today. Bye-bye.
Yeah, see you in the exhibition. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.